Okay, I'd like to welcome you all to the presentation today. And as it says there, it's teaching your front line to ask BSA question. Well, a lot of this also is going to be what's the responsibility of the front line as far as BSA issues in general are involved, and kind of some coordination between the frontline staff and the back office staff. As was explained, my name is Tom Milner. I was a national bank examiner for the control of the currency for 30 years. First 15 years or so, I was a safety and soundness examiner, and in the last 15 years or so, I was a BSA AML specialist. And I point that out because I understand pretty well how AML issues can affect the overall operations of the bank. So I point out that I did both of these jobs. I understand that BSA issues can impact the overall operations of the bank and how important it is for AML issues to be involved. I've also been a consultant since I retired. I've worked for a lot of different firms all over the world. For example, I just came back from Iraq, where I helped their financial institutions develop a regulatory regime. I'm going to Trinidad and Tobago in about a week to work down there and do the same kind of thing. I work for a part of the U.S. Treasury now as a consultant called the Office of Technical Assistance, where I go to different countries also and provide AML input and AML advice. And I've been an expert witness on a couple of cases that have dealt with AML issues. So I point this out just so you have an idea that I'm like most of you in that I worked in the trenches every day. I was for 30 years, every Monday, went to a bank, came home every Friday and did my reports. So I've got a lot of hands-on in the bank working with worker bee, frontline, and staff as to how to implement a good AML system. The agenda today, we're going to discuss the responsibilities of the front line. And when I talk front line, I'm probably mainly talking about tellers, account opening personnel, new account clerks, customer service personnel, generally anybody who has direct customer contact. Now, I understand also that this day and age that a lot of banks get customers online and they rarely see their customers. Well, a lot of the issues we're going to talk about need to be done when you're onboarding or when a customer contacts the bank, even if it's through a computer or a phone line or back and forth through faxes. So a lot of this, even though we think about the front line being the old teller line and the customer account opening personnel, it's anybody that deals with customers and how they ask questions and find out. Obviously, the front line conducts transactions. Now, what does that mean? They're the ones that are at the teller line that take a customer's deposits or loan payments or pay out savings accounts. They onboard the customer, meaning when a customer comes in and opens up the account, they're the ones that process all that, and they're the ones that update the customer information. So that's what we're talking about when we say conduct a transaction. Second bullet point, it's one of the responsibilities of the front line is to, in addition to conducting the transaction, update customer information. So as you're a frontline person, you're going to want to ask sometimes who's doing a transaction or for whose benefit are you doing the transaction, if it's like a company or something like that. What's the transaction? Why is it being conducted? So you're going to ask information that you might need to know if you think the transaction is something that's questionable. And that's kind of why I'm going to discuss training in a few minutes and contact with the back office, because if you as a frontline person know what the back office needs or wants, it'll help you do your job better when you're dealing with the customer. For a second about money laundering, what money laundering is. It's turning the proceeds of criminal activity, money derived from criminal activity, into legally used money. So if you have anybody who conducts a crime and it involves money, then by definition, they're going to launder money because they're taking money derived from criminal activity and trying to use it as legal tender. If you look at some of the recent news articles, and I'm trying to think of one here in Chicago where I live, there was a coach who had got in trouble for doing some things with some of his students. And that was hard to prove, but they finally did. But they also got him for money laundering because he got money from some of these, because he he paid bribes to some of these kids to not say something, therefore he was using illegal money. How do you ask questions? Always ask open-ended questions. I'm sure going through college or high school or whatever, you were always told, don't just ask yes or no questions, ask open-ended questions so the customer will answer and give you a lot more information rather than just say yes or no. A great ploy banks can use when they're updating information is say something like, hey, we have a new computer system, some of our data we can't find, we're updating the process, can I get some more information from you or new information? Now, who's going to argue with that when you say, okay, I'm sorry, our computer is broken, we got a new program, let's update your information, and makes a good cover for asking information. Let's talk about some STAR scenarios now that we did CTRs. And this is teller stuff because the teller and the frontline staff are the first ones to see this kind of activity take place. That's why I'm discussing it. But let's say in this activity right here, a personal account, somebody comes in on day 1 and deposits $5,000. Day 2, they deposit 5. Day 3, they deposit 3. Then 3 weeks later, they deposit the 4, 5, and the 3. A couple of different scenarios here. Conceivably, you could file a CTR on day 3, a currency transaction report, because did the person structure? You don't really know. But if you think it's fully justified and FinCEN's not going to say stop filing CTRs. I know it's kind of hard to do this sometimes, but maybe have your employees at the head office go out to a branch and see what it's like to work in a smaller office that's 50 miles away from downtown. For example, here in Chicago, all these banks are very sophisticated. It's kind of cool to work in Chicago. Well, show one of your employees from the Chicago branch what it's like to work out in the provinces in a smaller bank, what kind of concerns they have, and how the organization itself works together. Or have the back office come sit in sometime and watch somebody OJT on their job just to get some ideas. Or the same thing, have the front office staff go back to the back office. Give real-life examples. I've talked about that through the enforcement action process, but the more your staff knows about real-life current events in the banking industry and what issues and problems can be faced